Hello friends, welcome to my Facebook Live for the day. Today we are going to talk all about yoga mats, and I have about 7 of them here to show you. I wanted to come on and just share a little bit about what it's like to select a yoga mat, why there are so many of them, why do I have so many of them, which one is best for you. And so say hello when you've joined, share the video, put some hearts, tag somebody that you think this might be helpful for. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So welcome. My name is Deanna. For those of you that don't know me, I am the owner and director of Prana, Belly Dance, and Yoga. Hi, Pilar. And next month, September, is National Yoga Month. And I'm really excited because I'm going to be doing live classes over on FCBDU, as well as sharing a lot of tips and information throughout the whole month right here on my Facebook page. So if you're yoga curious, or you're a yoga fanatic, or you think you don't like yoga, then check out all the things that I'll be offering throughout September, because I am here to educate and be a resource for you in all things yoga and dance. Okay, so that is why I'm here today. Is next month is National Yoga Month, and you know, sometimes yoga can be intimidating. For those of you that are dancers, you understand that selecting a dance class, figuring out which one you want to go to, the style, the costuming, all of that is very overwhelming. There are a lot of decisions to be made. In yoga, unfortunately, that can tend to be the case as well. Like, what kind of yoga am I going to do? And what studio do I go to? And what mat do I use? And do I need a mat? So I'm here to hopefully help you kind of work through some of those questions. I have a bunch of notes here, so I will post these probably tomorrow morning, so that if you miss anything, you can come back and check it out. I'll also post links to the things that I'm going to talk about today as well. Hi, Joseph. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, it seemed appropriate to go ahead and discuss yoga mats in advance of National Yoga Month, because maybe you are in the market for a new one or you don't have one, and I just wanted to be sure to help you out before we got started in some of our classes. So before I get into the details of the yoga mats, I wanted to mention 3 facts, okay? So first, when I say yoga and when I reference yoga specifically for today, I am talking about the posture or the asana part of yoga. So yoga is a huge philosophy and lifestyle. There are many limbs of yoga: meditation, pranayama. There's just a lot of different limbs, which we'll get into in September. One of them is asana or postures. It's actually the smallest part of it, but that's the one that we know the most of, because that's what we can go to a class. That's what we see photos on Instagram. Like, that's the most visual part of yoga. So we just think of yoga as the physical practice. That's what I'm going to refer to today when I say yoga, but know that there is a much bigger picture, right? So for those of you that are belly dancers, it's not just about the movements. It's about the costuming and the technique details and the breath while you're dancing, like all of those things. So just know that yoga is the same. Okay, so that's tip number 1, or that's fact number 1. Fact number 2 is you don't actually need a yoga mat. So don't feel like you have to have a yoga mat in order to do postures, in order to do asana, because you don't. People have been doing yoga for thousands of years, and I can guarantee you there was no Lulu Lemon, Jade, or Manduka mats available even 100 years ago. So you do not need a yoga mat to practice yoga. We use yoga mats for a variety of reasons, which we'll go through when we're looking at the textures and the different materials that the yoga mats are made out of. Mostly it helps you feel more stable when you're moving. So a lot of the yoga mats are like sticky, or they have some gripping factors. Another aspect of it is comfort. I'm like customization. No, comfort, comfortable. So being on the floor, depending on especially the type of yoga that you're doing, a yoga mat might be more helpful on your knees. It might feel better on your feet. It might feel better on your wrists and on your hands. The main reason that I use a yoga mat is for sanitary purposes. So if I am in a studio, or heck, if I'm just practicing at home and I get into a child's pose, which is basically where I'm laying, face down on the floor with my forehead touching the floor, don't really want my face touching the floor no matter where I am, whether I just mopped my floors or not. So a yoga mat actually gives you a great sense of just cleanliness. It's your own personal space. Now you can go to yoga classes, well, pre-COVID, you could go to yoga classes and actually rent yoga mats. And that's a great way to try them out before you buy them. But even still, I'm a little, like, we do clean yoga mats between classes, so don't worry about those are being sanitized. They should be. They should be being sanitized. But still, there's just something about knowing that someone else was like face down on this same mat, or their feet were on this mat. So I just prefer to have my own. Hi, Sue. Sue says, thank you for saying that about not needing a yoga mat. Truly, they truly don't need one. I hate that most are rectangular. Haha, we're going to talk about that too. Even the circular ones are not really big enough. I know. We are going to talk about size. Size matters. We are going to talk about size and shapes as well today. Okay, and so I did want to say that, yeah, you don't have to have a yoga mat, but these are the reasons, some of the reasons we do have them. And the last little fact I want to share before we get into the yoga mats is, you know, yoga mats are like Zills. Whichever one you're actually going to use is the right one for you. So does mine have to be purple? Does it have to be pink? Does it have to have lines on it to show me where my feet go? It doesn't even matter. All of that, none of that matters. It's all about which one you are going to use. So I see my yoga mat as my sacred space. Like when I lay my yoga mat out, that puts this energy in my body, and it kind of brings to the subconscious, this is my time. This is my space. Like, doesn't matter what's happening outside of what's on my mat. It's only about what's on my mat. And so my mat to me is very sacred. So I hope that you can find one that feels that way as well. And I'm going to share with you, like, I have 7 mats. It doesn't mean I necessarily have 7 sacred spaces. Some of these mats I have moved on from. I don't use them anymore, or I found something better. And so I'm going to share a little bit of that with you as well. Okay, so here we go. How many mats do you need? Why do I have 7 mats in here? These are just the ones I've unrolled. Well, you can think about it as different tools for different jobs. Okay, so there are many different styles of yoga, and each style of yoga brings in some kind of unique aspect to it. Whether it's hot yoga and it involves a lot of sweat, whether it's restorative yoga and it involves you laying down a lot. Maybe it's yin yoga and it involves you being on the ground, but more so like you maybe on your knees or on your wrists or something like that. So depending on what style of yoga you are going to do is going to determine if there's a specialty mat that you want to have. And you can kind of think about it as like runners. I'm not a big runner, but I know that there are running shoes that have more cushion, and so they're best for this type of outside space. Or there are hiking shoes, or there are track running shoes, or there are soccer shoes, like different shoes for different tools. Like, yeah, you're still running, but depending on what kind of running you're doing, depends on what kind of shoes you would need. Hope that makes sense. Same concept for yoga. Okay. So if you're doing hot, sweaty yoga, one mat might be great for you. Like I said, if you're doing a restorative yoga, another mat might be really great for you. Now, I will tell you, yes, you could use, of course, no mat, or you could use just one mat for everything. It doesn't matter about the trends. It doesn't matter about the styles. It's all about what works best for you. Okay, so mats vary by brand, but they also vary by material that they're made out of, the top layer of material, the length, the size. There are a lot of different factors to take into consideration when you are looking at yoga mats. So let's first talk about some of the most popular brands. Now, there are a lot of yoga mat brands out there. There are even like yoga clothing companies that are now creating mats. There are companies that are kind of coming and going. There are even some new yoga mat companies that are making more of a hybrid of almost like a towel with a yoga mat built in. And for those of you that have taken hot yoga, I'm not talking about the yoga towel you lay on top. I'm actually talking about a woven rug style of yoga mat. So that's a new trend coming out too, and I haven't tried those out yet. So lots of different brands, lots of different materials, lots of thickness, lots of different sizes, and a few different shapes. All right. So I am a big advocate of supporting brands that I believe in and not just the trends. So it doesn't matter to me if I spend $20 on a yoga mat or $10 on a yoga mat or $120 on a yoga mat. What matters to me is I'm supporting the company and their beliefs. I like what this company offers. They're a trusted brand that I feel really confident to put my money into. So again, don't feel like you need to buy a mat because someone has recommended that one for you. Also research the companies that you are investing in. As I said, I have two of them. One is better when I stand on my hands, but the second one supports me better when I sit or lay down. Broken tailbone, exactly. So different tools, different purpose, different level of support, different comfort. Absolutely. Okay, some of the most popular brands are Manduka, which I do have a few. I might have a few of those laying around here. I'll show you. Jade is another popular yoga brand, mat brand. Gaiam is one, and of course I'll link to all of this as well. And also some of the fashion companies, sportswear companies like Alo, A-L-O, and Lulu Lemon. Many others are also coming out with mats, and some of them kind of trend, come and go. And really, yoga has become this whole fashion industry. So even every year, these companies are coming out with new trends in yoga mats or new material, or this yoga mat is great for brunching after yoga or whatever. They're getting really crazy with the amount of yoga mats that are being made. So just continuously researching, but I'm here to share at least 7 of them. Okay, so if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in here. Inez says, yes, about the energy. I love my Prana mat. Yes, Prana, not this one, but another company does make their own yoga mats as well. They are a clothing company, but they also sell yoga clothing and have their own accessories. And so yoga mats are definitely one of those. So when choosing a yoga mat, aside from if you're just specifically choosing by brand or you've kind of narrowed it down by brand, the material is the number one thing that I'm looking for when I am going to buy a yoga mat. So most yoga mats are made out of rubber. A lot of them are made out of a synthetic PVC, so like a synthetic rubber or synthetic vinyl. I prefer to use more natural rubber anytime that I can, because there's something about, breathing in deeply through my nose for 60 to 90 minutes and consistently smelling chemicals that just does not appeal to me. However, there are, and we'll get into this in just a second, there are some yoga mats that are made out of a synthetic material because it serves a certain purpose and there's not a natural material that can really do the same. So again, it depends on the factors. And really, if you lay your yoga mat out for a while, it'll get rid of any kind of residual smell that's on there, because even natural yoga mats might have kind of a smell. Sue says, I love my Nubby mat. It's a bit thicker. I got it in the 90s. I recommend thicker myself. Thanks for bringing that up. We're going to talk about that too. Okay, so materials when choosing a mat is the biggest thing for me. And many of them are made from PVC. Now, the PVC material tends to be more sticky when it gets wet. So for people that do a more hot yoga, like a Bikram or a hot vinyasa, where it's, anywhere from 90 to 105 degrees and you're dripping sweat about 30 minutes and on into the class, those more synthetic fibers can sometimes have be a little more absorbent and hold that moisture a little bit better in order to allow you to continue to stick on the mat, and so that you don't end up being a slip and slide, right? Because nobody wants to be in downward facing dog and then their hands slip out from under them and they walk out of yoga with like a broken nose. I haven't seen that happen, but I guess it could. But yeah, so I'll show you that mat and I'll show you some pros and cons of that one as well. Okay, so, and actually in my notes, so I want to bring this up because Sue's just mentioned it too. And you might think, okay, so material and also thickness, like how thick is that material? And you might think, well, like thicker is better. And for some people, thicker is better. For me, it depends on what I'm using the mat for. So, material and thickness. If I am using a mat for a more restorative or even a yin style of yoga where I'm not balancing a whole lot, I'm not on my hands, holding myself on my hands a whole lot, then a thicker mat works really well for me. My thick mat here is my jade mat, so I'm going to take you back there and show you these mats individually. So that's a great mat. However, for me, if I'm doing a lot of standing poses and balancing on one leg, so if I'm working on tree pose or warrior three or any kind of like standing balancing series, the thicker mat, it's a little bit harder to balance, which is great because it adds that level of challenge. However, for me personally, I feel it in my ankles and in my shins the next day. And so that makes me, that just makes me not really want to practice with it personally. However, if you have low back pain or bad knees, a thicker mat might be really great for you. So again, trying it out before you buy it. And if you're not sure and you have a thin mat, fold it in half and do a little mini practice on half of your mat and see if you like that thickness. Okay, so let's see. Some mats are made out of a certain material and they're so thick, and then they have a different type of material on top to add that level of like stickiness or grip. So I'm going to take you around. I'm going to show you what I have here in the studio and just let you kind of see what the material is and how much I stick to it and what I use these individual mats for. All right. So Inez says, yeah, mine used to smell awfully. Natural rubber. Had to air it out for a month straight. What is your opinion on cork material mats? I have not used a cork material mat. I want to. I have a cork block that I love. The only reason I have not tried a cork material mat is because I take and teach a lot of hot vinyasa. And a cork material mat to me feels like it's going to absorb all of my sweat and it's going to be hard to clean. I haven't researched that. So if you love your cork mat, let me know. Again, it goes to that style of yoga. I tend to do a really sweaty practice when I don't teach a sweaty practice at home, obviously, but I go to the studio when I'm teaching. It's a hot vinyasa. And I also used to do a lot of Bikram, which is 105 degrees. So again, the cork mat for those purposes wasn't really something I was interested in exploring, but I'm open to the cork mats now because I'm at home most of the time doing my yoga these days. Okay, so let's go on a little tour. So I will show you. I'm here in my studio. I'm here in my studio. That's not what I want to do at all. That's what I wanted to do. Okay, so I have 7 mats here. They are varying materials and varying thickness. So I'm going to take you kind of to each one and show you what they're used for. Look how dirty that one is. I will tell you why shortly, and it's not because I use it a lot. So this is the first mat I want to show you. This is a jade mat, Jade. And again, I will put in the note. I'll send you all some notes. So notice it's 2 colors. This mat is probably about 7 years old. Now, throughout the month, I'm going to talk about mat care, mat cleaning tips and techniques, and as well as like mat cleaner recipe and how to care for your mat, what to do when you're like over the mat, how to recycle it, all that stuff. I can tell you that this mat is different colors because it sat in my car because I used it consistently and I needed to take it after work. So it just sat in my car. So that's why these are 2 different colors. So I don't recommend storing your mat in your car for a number of reasons, and that's one of them. So this mat it's pretty sticky, but it feels kind of like outdoor furniture cushions. That's kind of the only reference I can kind of think about, where it's water repellent, so it doesn't absorb water that well. And that's this specific style of mat. Of course, Jade's going to have a lot of different styles and models, if you will, of mats. So I like this mat because of the feel of it. It's not rubbery. And also look how, there it is, Jade. JadeYoga.com. You see how thick this mat is? This is a blister from gardening, sorry. Do you see how thick this mat is? I mean, it's pretty much like the thickness of 2 yoga mats. This is the mat that if I'm doing a lot of balancing poses, I feel it the next day in my ankles and in my shins. And I just have sensitive shins. Even playing soccer the next day, I just had horrible shin splints no matter what. So this one does that to me. So this thicker mat is fantastic for things like yin yoga and restorative yoga, where I'm on the floor and I like a little extra cushion on my joints. So that's why I use this thicker mat. Now I'm just going to kind of rub my foot on here so that you can see. So I'm going to do this to each one of my mats so you can kind of see how the sticky factor. It's pretty sticky. Like if I push my foot forward, it has some good grip. You can see even if my toes are lifted, there's some pretty good grip here. So, if I'm doing something like, I don't know, a frog pose or some kind of yin yoga pose, my knees aren't going to slide out from underneath me. So that's great. So this is great for safety in that way. So Jade mat, this thicker one, is a really fantastic mat, but like I said, I use it for things where I'm not standing a lot and not balancing a lot. Now, this mat, you can see was obviously stored a little bit funny. I haven't used this mat in a long time, but here's what I'm going to tell you about this mat. This mat is my favorite mat in the whole world. Was my favorite mat in the whole world. And I'm going to tell you, I bought this mat probably 20 years ago at a TJ Maxx for like $15 or less. The reason it's my favorite mat is probably not the reason that you would think. This is a standard yoga mat that you can get at like a Target or a Walmart or something like that. It's pretty good thickness. It's not too thick, and you can see it grips on both sides. It's definitely a man-made material, some kind of synthetic vinyl material. And you can see that it definitely does wear and tear. You can see the wear and tear mostly where my hands are and where my feet are when I'm doing, like downward facing dog and planks. So depending on if you're doing, you can see on this side as well, it wears out pretty easily. So if you have one of these, it really was my favorite mat for a long time. And it just wears out. And I'll tell you, it was my favorite mat. So remember we said sacred space? It was my favorite mat because this is the one that I used when I did teacher training. It was just always there with me every single day, 2 and 3 times a day sometimes. And so, it's definitely worn out, but a normal yoga, normal yoga mat, a higher quality yoga mat would not wear out that fast, no matter how much yoga you did in a 3-month period. So, that one definitely works well. If you plan on doing yoga maybe 3 or 4 times a week, it's going to wear out pretty quick. But it's definitely worth, this is kind of the one that everybody starts with, right? Sometimes there are different colors or different patterns on top, but this is kind of like what people think of the standard yoga mat. So this is a great one kind of for everything, really. It is synthetic, so but this one doesn't absorb sweat like some of the other ones do, like we're going to look at. But there we go. So that's that one. This one that I'm standing on is actually fairly new. Oh, actually, let me do this little foot test for you. So you can see with this one, don't mean to make you dizzy, it actually has pretty good grip as well, even when I lift my toes. Now, the thing about this one is it's so thin that depending on what you're doing in your class, you may have to fix it a couple of times. So for instance, when I'm doing something like plank, chaturanga, upward facing dog, and then flip over my toes for downward facing dog. When I first started doing that, I didn't have a whole lot of core strength. And every time I did that, the mat just came with the tops of my feet. So definitely, it's sticky, but it's also not as grippy. It's because it's a little bit thinner too. Okay. Diana says, I think I have the exact same low budget blue one. It's under my other mat these days. Yeah, actually I have one of those in blue. It's my husband's. And it's a great one to put under something else or on top of something else. So if you have a mat that's really thick and you like it, but it doesn't grip as well, throw that mat on top of it. And there you go. So great point, Diana. Nice. Thanks for mentioning that. So this mat is, you can definitely see it's, I say it's fancy, but it's because it has this beautiful design on it. So this mat is Yeti Yoga, and I just have it backwards here, Yeti Yoga, and it's a specialty Pendleton mat. So each mat that they created that was Pendleton has a different design on it. And this was a mat that was a gift. It was a really sweet gift from a student. And I love this mat for so many reasons. However, this mat is not sticky at all. So this is a mat that I would use if I was just doing stuff on the floor. And I, just love it so much that it's worth just pulling this mat out for the end of another class of just doing like a little bit of floor cool down. So this is a great mat. It's not very sticky. You can make mats sticky by scrubbing them with some salt water, but I don't want to do that with this mat. Who wants to scrub this mat with salt water? Because I don't want to ruin the design. So I only pull this one out on special floor-related yoga purposes. But definitely it's such a beautiful mat. And, sometimes you just want a beautiful mat that doesn't have the grip. You're not going to sweat all over it, but you're going to have it and feel really great when you do some stuff on the floor. All right, so let's move on. This is the other mat I want to show you. Now, currently, this is the mat that I use every day, my daily practice. So this mat stays rolled out in my room. It is a Manduka mat. You can see by the little froggy logo, Manduka mat. Now, you can tell by all the cat hair and dirt factor, that I use it every day and that it stays out. This mat is really thin. It's not as thick as that purple one. Definitely not as thick as the green one, but it's really thin. And notice the back part of the mat is made out of it's like a different material. So there's definitely a cover on top that is a different material than what's gripping on the bottom. Now you can use it really either way that you want. This is an Eco Mat or Eco Mat. Manduka has a lot of different styles of mat. I'm going to show you actually two other ones that I have that are the same brand. The reason I like this mat is because it sticks a lot. It's really, really great at gripping. Like nothing's going anywhere. Even if I just lift my heel, like nothing is going anywhere on this mat. So I feel really confident on this mat when I'm doing something like headstands or practicing handstands or practicing balancing poses on my hands. I don't feel like I'm going to I am going to fall over, but it's not because of the mat. So this mat has been really, really great. Like I said, it's the one that's my favorite right now because, my purple one used to be my favorite one for so long. But this one I'm really, really loving. And this is the Manduka Eco Mat. So you can tell like the thickness feels really good. Now this is not one that I would use for restorative yoga or a yin style of yoga where I was sitting a lot. Even in meditation, I grab a meditation pillow to do that, to meditate on this mat. I don't use this mat for anything that I'm going to be on the floor for a long time. So here is one of my favorite mats, my current favorite mat. Claire says, I have a thicker version of that mat, and I have found that it isn't grippy once you start sweating. Yeah, this mat, for me, it is, and it might be just a different material on top. I'm not really sure. Maybe our sweat's a little different. I don't know. This one's been okay so far for sweat. It doesn't hold up for sweat as much as some of the other ones, but so far so good for me anyways. So yeah, I really like this Manduka mat. Okay, so we have those 4 different ones so far. I have 3 more I want to show you, but the super thick jade mat, like I said, is really great for things where you're going to be on the floor a lot. the simple purple classic yoga mat. They come in every color, a variety of thickness. Now, when you first get those mats, they're going to probably be a little bit slippery because, they're fresh and new and whatever. Take it home, go outside, scrub it with some salt water, and be done with it. It's going to last a long time. Not as long as some of the more expensive mats, but for $20, I mean, hey, you can't pass that up. Especially if you're not really sure if you're gonna, like yoga. Okay, so let's move on to this mat. Let's see. I had to lay some mats on top of it because I haven't used this mat in so long. It was just, curled up and wasn't coming back out. Okay, so this mat is a Lulu Lemon Mat. Now, Lululemon is a high-end yoga clothing brand here in the US. I think they're Canadian-based. And this mat was designed to be used in hot yoga. But I'm going to preface with this. I personally love Lululemon. I'm wearing their pants and their leggings right now. I don't love their mats. I wanted to love their mats so bad. I really, really did. But this is why. Okay, so they claim that this mat, and I'm not being paid by any of these people, so I can just tell you my honest opinion. This mat, while the concept sounds really great, personally, I think it was a gimmick because this mat is supposed to be designed for hot, sweaty yoga. You see, the back of it's fantastic. The back of it is like this rubber tire-y kind of feel, like it's not going to go anywhere. However, that's great for the floor, but that's not great for my feet. Let me show you something about this mat. So this mat, super slippery. Now, if I was doing a downward facing dog, I would be gripping my hands so much that my wrists would hurt because I would be afraid I would fall over. What they say about this mat is that it absorbs sweat really well, and the more sweaty you are, the better you stick to it, or the better grip it gets. Okay, let's think about that. The more sweat this mat absorbs, the stickier it gets. That's gross. The reason it's gross is it's like a sponge. So are they saying it's like a sponge? And I mean, I sweat a lot. And how am I supposed to wring that out after the class? Like, it just doesn't, what am I supposed to do the first 20 minutes that I'm in class and not really sweating that much? Slide around, break my neck, and then hope that I sweat enough that my mat absorbs my sweat so that I don't fall over? And then after class, that's gross. So I wanted to love the mat. I got it. I tried it. I took it to a bazillion hot classes. I got sweaty. You can see I've washed this mat. I have scrubbed this mat. It still has these stains, which I'm assuming, this is gross, is my sweat that's like absorbed in this mat. I just don't know about that. What do you guys think? Or what do you all think? Sorry. Sue says, so it's not about how good you are doing a pose. Maybe it's about how good your mat is. You got it, Suze. Claire says, it's like a micro suede texture. Kinda. Paula says their version of salt water. Yeah, Paula, I guess, but I would rather it come already fixed. Yeah, it's kind of like a do-it-yourself saltwater scrub. Ew. Let's get a close-up of this that doesn't have my sweat. It's, there's not a lot of texture to it. Even it's shiny from the light of my phone. There's not a lot of texture to it. So I don't know. I feel like they should have just stuck with the back of the mat and said, okay, we're done. And just had the whole mat made out of that. Or, what really is probably the thing is that somebody designed this mat and then someone else that actually does yoga said, this is a piece of shit. And someone's like, no. The more wet it gets, you just need to wash it. The wetter it gets, the grippier it is. And someone's like, came up with a brilliant marketing idea of let's sell it as a hot yoga mat. And then the sweatier you get, the more sticky it is. And I just think that was a big fail. And I'm sorry if I've offended anybody that is a huge Lululemon mat fan. I am a huge Lululemon fan, but I'm not a fan of their mats. And here's the thing. I have kept this mat for this long, not liking it, because I don't want to throw it away because it was expensive. But one of the things I'm going to share, I think it's the second Saturday in September, is what to do with your old yoga mats. Oh, the third Saturday in September, what to do with your old yoga mats. Lots of ideas. Got them. So I'm going to share those with you. So it's going to be scary. It's kind of like cutting up a piece of a suit. Maybe I'll cut up this mat and I'll show you some of those examples. Lacey says, I think ew. I think ew also, Lacey. I think that's just gross. Okay, and then I'm going to show you another mat. You ready for another? I got 2 more mats to show you. Let's do this. This is like one of my favorite parts. Whee! Okay, so this is another Manduka mat, and I'm going to tell you. Does anybody know why I bought this mat? I think you can guess why I bought this mat. So I'll give you a second while I'm showing you this mat to kind of guess why I got it. Lacey says, I have a very thick mat, so comfy. Yeah, that's great, Lacey. Thick mats are great for, like I was saying, for me and my jade mat, the squishy factor is a little too much that it actually ends up not being great on my ankles. But this mat has a different type of texture on the bottom than it does on the top. And so I really like this mat. It's kind of like a simple mat. It's a standard kind of thickness. And the sticky factor of this one is pretty good as well. It's not as great as this one, but it's thicker. So it's a kind of a nice best of both worlds kind of mat. Now, this is the mat that they use at one of the yoga studios that I was teaching at downtown pre-COVID. And I really liked it. Now, the benefit was that I could test it out at that yoga studio, not this one, like one of the rentals, and then see if I liked it, and then I could buy that. So I bought this mat. Lacey got it because it's turquoise. So, I mean, sometimes you just got to have the mat because it's pretty. But I did make sure before I spent like the $90 on this thing or however much that it was, that I actually liked it and that I would use it. So I use this mat when I'm filming for yoga. So you'll see this yoga mat probably in a lot of the classes that I'll teach next month in September, starting next week, because it's just, it just looks good. It's pretty. So it is a really great kind of overall standard mat. It's just not as grippy as this one. So I'm going to feel a little more confident on this one practicing hand balancing than I will on this one. But at the same point, this one has just a little more padding. So it's just a little more comfortable and not so much that it's going to hurt. So that's that one. Okay, so Nora says, I have the same mat. I love that color. It's comfortable with a great thickness. Absolutely. We're mat twins, Nora. All right, so this last mat that I'm going to show you, here, let me give you some mat etiquette for a second also. Okay, when you are laying out your mat, if you go to a studio and you're laying out your mat, set the mat down and gently roll the mat out. What you don't want to do is walk into a studio and do this. Because that is annoying everybody around you. So if you've been doing that, like flipping your mat out when you get to the studio or when you get to a class, stop it. The rest of us are trying to be all zen and you're coming in there being all loud. Okay, so this mat, look at this mat. Look at that. This is a travel mat. So Claire says, actually, she says, I just bought a travel mat that has a fabric micro suede texture on the top, like a hot yoga mat. It's grippy when my hands are sweaty. This is fantastic for that. So this is a travel mat. It is Manduka. What I like about it is the top is pretty much just as sticky as that green mat, the first green mat over there. So you can see it's super sticky. And I like this sticky factor. So, but what I also like about it is that when I'm traveling, which I did a lot of in my past job, and I'm supposed to be doing a lot of in my current job, thanks COVID, you can just fold this bad boy up and stick it in your suitcase or even in your backpack, and it's perfect for that. So this is a travel mat from Manduka. It's also an eco mat, so it's probably made out of the same material. It does feel like it's more of a fabric with the top coating on, on it of the regular Manduka style mat. It almost feels like a really fine grit sandpaper. Like the kind that you just barely would rub something. That's what it feels like, is a fine grit sandpaper. It kind of looks like it too. So that is the travel mat that I really love. And actually this one I wanted for a long time, and I wasn't really sure about it because I was like, but is it really going to work? And my friend Christine got one and she loved it. And so I tried hers out and it was great. So I got it. So thanks, Christine, for letting me try yours before I bought it. That was a while ago, of course, pre-COVID as well. Okay, so far we have covered, let me put you in my little phone holder here. So far we have covered, why you would want maybe some of these different styles of mats, different thicknesses of mats, different textures of mats. So ultimately the one that you love is what I recommend, the one that you should use. But you can see if you have a mat that's really thin and you just don't feel like it gives you the squishy factor that you want, know that there are other thicknesses. If you have a mat that's really thick, but for some reason, when you're doing yoga, maybe your ankles are a little sore the next day or your wrists are a little bit sore the next day, just try a thinner mat and see. I know it seems counterintuitive, but just try it and see. And if you have a mat that you are like, I can't do downward facing dog, I'm just gonna slide around a little bit, then first thing I would try is scrubbing it with salt water, letting it dry, and see if that helps make it a little more grippy. And if not, know that there are different levels of grip factor out there, and you can try one that's a little more sticky, or you can even find something that is really thin and sticky and put it over your current mat. So for instance, if you're interested in a travel mat, but you already have a mat at home that you wish was more sticky, throw that travel mat on top of your current mat, and that could work for you. So some of the mats that I don't have yet that I'm going to try one day are the Cork mats. So the person that, thank you for that recommendation. And the big round, they're starting to make round mats. So we'll get into shapes and sizes. So a standard yoga mat is approximately 68 inches, which is 68 inches, which is approximately 173 centimeters. That's about 5'8", which is that's the standard size. Now they do make 72-inch mats, which are approximately 182 centimeters. I had to look these centimeters up. So approximately 182 centimeters. So it's about 4 inches longer than a standard mat. 4 inches counts. I mean, those 4 inches are the difference for somebody that might be 6 foot tall and they don't like their feet hanging off, their mat during Shavasana or something like that. So if you are looking for a longer mat, they certainly have them. Not every brand is going to have a longer mat, but many of them will. Some brands, unfortunately, and maybe they're getting away from this, but they were advertising them as men's mats, and I feel like that's just dumb. So if you can't find one, Google search a man's mat, and you might find a longer length mat, although it's just a longer length mat. Works for everybody. Okay, and then yoga mats tend to all be the same width, which is about 24 inches, approximately 61 centimeters. And for the most part, that's the right width. However, they have now started making big round mats, which I am all about. And I want the one that has the crescent moon phases on it, but I don't need it, so I haven't bought it yet. But they have them, which can be really great because there are some styles of yoga that you would go and you would lay 2 mats down, one long ways and one horizontal and one vertical, so that you can do yoga depending on what part of the class you're facing one way with your legs out wide, or you're facing the other way with one foot in front of the other, and you don't have to turn your mat. And so I feel like that would be really fun with just a big round mat. You can kind of go wherever you want, create some beautiful shapes, be really playful in your space. A round mat is not going to be the great one to actually take and go to a yoga studio, because a lot of yoga studios, they lay their mats out in a specific way so that a certain number of people fit in the studios, especially right now. They're actually marking out spots so that everybody is at least 6 feet apart. So I wouldn't show up to a yoga studio with a round mat, but it's absolutely okay to show up with like a 72-inch mat versus a 68-inch mat. So just know that those are available out there. Those are really the only shapes that I have seen. I want to say that I've seen a big square one for like partner yoga, where it's basically like if 2 or 3 mats were side by side, but it was just one big mat for something like partner yoga or acro yoga. All right, so let's see if we have any questions so far. Hopefully this is helpful. Sometimes, when you go to buy a yoga mat, the places have one brand of yoga mat. And so you don't want to go to 10 different places looking. And you don't necessarily want to just buy a Lulu Lemon mat because you like their clothes, because maybe their mats aren't so great. And Manduka, for instance, I don't think they do clothing, but they only do mats, and they only sell their products online and in yoga studios. I don't think they have like actual stores. If you know of a Manduka store, I would love to know about it. So those are about 7 mats. I have a couple more, but they're just another color of one that's out here. And those are the sizes and the lengths. So let's see. Okay, so the last 2 things I wanted to mention was coming up in September. I'm teaching live yoga classes over on FCBDU. So it's going to be members only. So if you are a member of FCBDU, go over there and check it out. I will post more information about that on Friday. And if you're not a member, it's $25 a month. And even if you just become a member for September, you're going to get 13 live yoga classes for $25. So hey, you can't beat that. But throughout the month here on Facebook, I'm going to post tips, like I said, tips on cleaning your mats, taking care of your mats, how to create or how to sew yoga mat straps and yoga mat bags. So all kinds of fun stuff for your mats. So Kalila says, oh, REI carries Manduka. Fantastic. Jennifer says, Findelkreis mats are big squares and way thick. Okay, so I've seen the big square ones. So Nora says, what about towels for on top of the mat? That's a great point, Nora, and I did not bring mine down, but here's what I'll talk about towels on top of your mat. So towels, they make these yoga mat towels, believe it or not. They make these yoga mat towels, which is basically like a really thin towel with some grippiness underneath it. And the towels are designed to put on top of your yoga mat for when you are doing hot, sweaty yoga. I have found that the yoga towels work best for Bikram style of yoga. There are not any downward facing dogs in Bikram style of yoga. There aren't any chaturangas or planks or upward facing dogs, things that for me would require you to have that extra grippy factor. They're really great, of course, at absorbing sweat and just being able to just toss it in the washing machine when you get home along with your nasty yoga clothes. Just throw it all in the washing machine. So the yoga towels are really, really great. I have tried to use them in like a regular, let's say even a hot vinyasa class. And in a vinyasa class, for those of you that aren't familiar, a vinyasa class has a lot of on your hands and your feet, or your hands and your knees, and standing up and going down, and wide leg stuff, and reaching your feet apart from each other. Whereas a Bikram class is pretty much you're in this one spot, you're doing things like standing on one leg and extending out. There's a set sequence. So in a vinyasa style class, when I put my yoga towel down, I'm not going to be sweaty in that class until probably 15 to 20 minutes in. And my towel's not going to be like super gross and sweaty either. So I slip and slide a lot with my yoga towel in those classes. What I end up doing is taking the towel, laying it down, folding the edges in so that the towel is only in the center. And then when my mat gets sweaty and I'm like sliding on my mat, I extend my towel out and use it then. So I kind of do a hybrid thing on mats and yoga towels, but try a yoga towel and see if it works for you. The brand that I have is, I think it's called a Breathe Mat Breathe. I don't know if they still make them actually, because mine's about 10 or so years old. But I do really like it for a more of a style of yoga where I'm not trying to balance on my hands. I'm not doing a lot of, reaching my feet apart. Everything is just right here and I'm just dripping sweat, which is more of a Bikram style of class. Okay, so Inez says, I don't have a circular one yet, but in one class, a teacher has it. It's only not handy because it's huge when rolled together. Yeah, another thing is, how are you getting from one class to another? So if you ride a bike, for instance, probably a regular mat that you can just like strap on with your yoga strap or carry a sling or something is probably going to be great. Or if you just have to keep a mat in your car, then probably the $20 Target mat's going to be better because you won't ruin another mat by leaving it in the hot car. And yeah, so thanks for the information about the circular one. I really just want one because it's beautiful. So it's not anything that I practically need. But yeah, hey, it's accessories. It's kind of like another skirt. I don't need another skirt. But I mean, I'm not going to say no if there's a pretty one. So, okay. I think that's everything that I wanted to share. So if you have any questions, let me know. I wrote all of this out, or I typed it all out, because those of you that know me, that's what I do. So I will put this together in like a little blog with links to all of these brands, and maybe I'll add a few more things to answer some questions that might have come in. And I will share this along with this video. It'll probably be tomorrow by the time I get to that, because I'm teaching here in just a little bit. So yeah, keep asking questions if you have any. Thank you so much for joining me. I know it's like, yoga mats, how interesting can that be? But for those of you that have them and that use them, I mean, it can get pretty interesting. Some people don't realize that there is such a variety. And this is just what I have in the house. Like, you can research yoga mats all day long on Google. And I feel like yoga mats they're individual. Like, what I'm going to like doesn't mean that someone else is going to like it, and vice versa. So like, for instance, Lacey and Suze were like, oh my gosh, I love my thick yoga mat. And I'm like, I love mine only for certain things, but other people might hate thinner sticky mats because, maybe they do a different style of yoga where they don't really have to have the sticky factor and they want the cushy factor. So yeah, that's what I was going to say. Now, for those of you taking yoga outside, keep that in mind when you are taking your mat out there with you. If you are going outside and you're going to be on concrete, grab a mat that's going to be have that bottom rubber factor that's not going to get eaten up by the concrete. This purple mat from Target, the concrete, it just sticks to it, and then when you peel it up, you lose part of your mat on the sidewalk. So try not to do that. So take the application in mind when you're thinking about your mats. Okay, well, thank you all for joining me. I'm going to go now and prepare for my class that I'm teaching here in just a little bit, and I will see you all throughout the entire month of September. I'm excited. Again, National Yoga Month, so I'm going to give as much as I can possibly give. I have a whole calendar full of stuff I want to do for you. So if anything pops in mind that you want me to cover, just let me know. Okay? Much love to all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy yoga mat searching. Remember, the best yoga mat for you is the one that you are going to use. And if you don't have a yoga mat, it is okay. It is not a requirement for yoga at all. All you need in order to do yoga is yourself and your breath. And that's it. You're doing yoga, whether you're in a posture or not. Yourself and your breath is your yoga. Much love, you all. I'll see you soon. Bye.